Alright, hi everyone, and welcome to Act 1 of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Now, this is my favorite work of Shakespeare, my favorite book, my favorite play, my favorite everything, but it can be a really tough read. I remember I struggled a lot with it the first time I read it, and it is the longest Shakespeare play. So, we're going to get started, and I hope you really enjoy it because I'm going to put a lot of passion into it because it's my favorite. So it starts out a lot like Romeo and Juliet, with these two characters who show up but will not matter at all for the rest of the play. There are guards on top of the Denmark castle, and their names are Bernardo and Francisco, and they're talking about how cold it is. And then two more characters show up to join them, Marcellus, who matters a little bit more than the guards, and Horatio, who is a main character. He's super awesome. And so they say, hey, why did you call us onto this rooftop in the middle of the night? And the guards say, well, there's this weird image that's kind of been appearing. We thought you guys might want to know about it. And Horatio's like, psh, please. There are no weird images appear. Oh my God, what is that? Because then an image appears, and it's the ghost of the king who just died. And so all the guys sort of get into a little huddle, and they're like, you go talk to it. No, you go talk to it. So finally Horatio goes over to talk to it, and he says, why are you here? What do you want? Why do you look like our dead king? And the ghost just kind of looks at him, and then it walks away without doing something cool and ghostly like disappearing. It just walks off. So the guys regroup, and Horatio says, wow, that was weird. That ghost looked like our king who just died. And he reminds everyone, not that they need reminding, but we need to know how the king who just died was a great king, everyone loved him, he was great in battle. Also, Denmark is currently having political issues with Norway. That really doesn't matter, but it'll matter a little bit at the end. So as they're talking about this, the ghost re-enters, and Horatio turns around and he says, please talk to us, we just want to help you. What do you want? What are you doing here? Again, the ghost looks at him and just leaves. And so the guys see the sunrise, and they're like, wow, that was weird. And Horatio's like, I wonder what the ghost wanted. And thus begins the tragedy of Hamlet, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 1, Scene 2. So now we're in Denmark, in the royal court of Elsinore, the capital, and we're with the king, Claudius, the queen, Gertrude, the attendant Polonius and his son Laertes, and our hero, Prince Hamlet, and some other attendants who don't matter. And the king is giving a speech about recent events for us, because I'm pretty sure everyone else in the room knows what happened. So he tells us that the old king, Hamlet Sr., died under mysterious circumstances, and that he, Claudius, remarried the queen and became king. Now this is pretty weird for a couple of reasons, including but not limited to. That is not how monarchy works. Hamlet Jr. should now be king in terms of lineage. And he married his brother's wife like the minute after his brother died, which is kind of messed up. So we can see Hamlet on stage thinking all the things we're thinking, but he doesn't say anything right away. He's just sort of stewing. So the king turns to Laertes, who's probably about Hamlet's age, and says, how are you doing, Laertes? And Laertes is like, great. I wanted to ask if I could go back to France now that you've been coronated, because I want to continue on with whatever I was doing there. And not that it hasn't been real, but... And the king says, yeah, sure, go ahead. So now he turns to Hamlet and says, how is my son doing today? And Hamlet says, please don't call me that, it's weird. And his mom says, his real mom, his queen, his mom, the real deal, says, Hamlet, why are you in such a bad mood? And he says, well, I don't know, my dad's dead and no one seems to be mourning him, and a lot of other weird and disturbing stuff have been going on. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. And so the king just sort of gives like, oh no, ho ho, I bet I know, cheer you up, going back to college, getting out of here. And Hamlet says, no, I think I'll stick around a little bit longer. So everyone says, that's good, and exits, except for Hamlet, who stays behind. Now Hamlet is aware of how weird everything is. Everyone else is probably thinking it's weird, but Hamlet is going to be the one to say it out loud. So he's weirded out that his mom married his uncle, that his dad died like just a few months ago and everyone seems to have forgotten about him. He's miserable here in Denmark, none of his friends are here. He wants to go back to college, but he feels they could be wrong. And so he says all of this out loud in a little soliloquy to himself, and then Horatio and Marcellus enter. Now, Hamlet and Horatio are like best friends forever. Buddies, amigos, bros, they have this super intense broship bond. So, to see Horatio, he's stoked. This is his best bro. So they go over and they hug and they chatter about what's been going on in college and stuff. And so after a little bit, the conversation turns to, hey Horatio, don't you think it's kind of weird that my mom married my uncle like 2 days after my dad died? That seems kind of weird. And Horatio goes, yeah, that was pretty weird and gross, but listen, Marcellus and I saw the ghost of your dad last night, and we think you should come check it out tonight. Apparently it's going to be back. And Hamlet's like, whoa. So he asks a couple of questions to make sure it was definitely his dad, as if they could be certain. Make sure they're not crazy, as if he could be certain. And then says, alright, I'll check it out. So the other two guys go, sweet, and they leave, making preparations for where to meet up and stuff. And Hamlet says to himself, well, this is pretty weird, but I might as well go check it out, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 1, Scene 3. Right now we are with the Polonius family, which right now consists of brother, sister duo, Laertes and Ophelia. Ophelia is my favorite character ever. And so Laertes is a strapping, educated man, and Ophelia is his very pretty sister, who is the girlfriend of our hero, Prince Hamlet. So, like we said, Laertes is leaving for France, and before he goes, he's just reminding his sister about dating Hamlet, which is filled with sexist double standards. Ophelia calls him out on being sexist, but then her even more sexist father enters, sends Laertes off with his blessing, and starts a conversation with Ophelia. He's like, hey guys, what were you talking about? And Ophelia has had this conversation before, so she knows how this is going to go. But she still goes, Hamlet, I guess. Now, Polonius is not a very likable character. He's mean to his children, he's annoying, he's old, and he always talks forever every time he has dialogue. But this is the 14th century, so girls always have to listen to their dads no matter how bad at being dads they are. So he says, Hamlet, you've been playing hard to get, right, with that guy? 'Cause ain't no point in dating if he's not gonna marry you. And Ophelia says, I don't know, Dad, I think it's pretty serious. He's been sending me a lot of love letters, and he's been very honorable in showing his love to me, and I like him a lot, so... And her dad says, who cares how you feel about it? Listen, you gotta reject him, because that's the only way of testing someone's love for you. Now, Ophelia's kind of bummed about it, because she really does like this guy, but she can't say no to her dad, because that's just not how things work. So she's like, oh, okay, we'll try it. And they both leave, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 1, Scene 4, hanging out with the college boys at midnight. So Horatio, Marcellus, and Hamlet are all on the roof. They're complaining about how it's dark and cold. Hamlet's complaining about his own life, which consists of his uncle marrying his mom, basically ruining his life, and how his uncle's also a bad king and doesn't deserve the throne. Hamlet doesn't say he deserves the throne, he's just saying that Claudius should not be sitting on it. And, just as he says this, the ghost reappears. Now, obviously, all three of the dudes are freaked out, but not as freaked out as Hamlet is, because this is his first time seeing the ghost. And now he's about 85% sure it's the ghost of his dad. So he goes, tell us what you want. And the ghost doesn't say anything, again, but it sort of reaches out and beckons to him, away from his friends. And Horatio and Marcellus are like, dude, don't go with the ghost. And Hamlet's like, I'm going with the ghost. And Horatio says, well, listen, what if it's not a ghost? What if it's a demon that's trying to lead you to hell? And Hamlet's like, I'm following the ghost. And so he goes off and follows the ghost, and they both exit. Horatio and Marcellus are horrified. Marcellus says the iconic line, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. And they leave to follow Hamlet and the ghost, who have just exited, and that's the end of the scene. Act 1, Scene 5. So Hamlet is still following this ghost, but he's been following him for a while. So finally he stops and says, "Look, talk to me or I'm not going to go any further." So the ghost turns around and he says, "Listen, I need you to avenge my death." And Hamlet says, "Avenge? What?" And the ghost says, "Yeah, soon I'm going to go on to hell or purgatory or wherever the flames are, and I need you to avenge my murder. Hopefully you'll do it because you're my kid, because my murder does need to be avenged by somebody. And if you ever love me, you'll kill the guy who killed me." And Hamlet's like, "I mean, I guess I did love you, but wait, you were murdered?" And the ghost goes, "Yeah, your uncle killed me. Either he wanted to get with my wife, or he wanted to be king. Who knows? Either way, it worked out for him. Because basically I was just taking a cat nap, and he came up and poured poison in my ear, and I died. He killed me and nobody knew. So, yeah, avenge me. Avenge me." And Hamlet's pretty horrified, but the ghost disappears, so you can't really get any more details out of him. Now, this is a big issue for Hamlet, like a big issue beyond the whole murder deal, because in 14th century Christianity, if you killed someone, you're going to hell. That was how the rules worked all the time. You didn't get out of it. Plus, he has to kill the king, and that's going to be pretty tricky because you can't just go up to the guy and be like, "A ghost told me you were a murderer, so hee-yaw!" So how is he even going to go about killing this dude? So he starts raving about how he hates his uncle and how this is awful and his life is pretty bad. And suddenly he hears Horatio and Marcellus, who are probably, panting, having chased him throughout this whole castle. And they're calling out for him. They're like, "Prince, where are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm over here, guys." And so they run in. They're like, "What happened? Did the ghost talk to you?" And he's like, Yeah. And they say, "Well, okay, what did he say?" And Hamlet's like, "Meh, I can't tell you. You definitely tell other people." And they're like, No, bro, not on our lives." And Hamlet's like, "Well, you have to swear that you'd never tell anybody." And the ghost, who's now off stage but can still yell at people, I guess, go and swear it. And so they have to swear on Hamlet's sword a bunch of separate times. And it's pretty freaky for them because it looks like their friend has gone nuts. A ghost is yelling at them from underneath the floor. It's a pretty freaky circumstance all in all. So finally, they're sweared out. Hamlet is satisfied, and he says, "Okay." He doesn't tell them what happened. He's just like, "You have to promise this didn't happen." And they're like, "All right, we'll never say anything." And so he's like, "Okay, now we need to make a plan." He does not make a plan because this is the end of the scene, but he says he's going to make a plan. And that's the end of the scene. And that was Act 1. Ghosts, intrigue, predictable sexism, teenage romance, teenage murder. It's a good time in the court of Denmark. So, good luck studying, everybody. Please leave any comments and questions you have, and I will see you next time for Act 2. Hey, hi everyone, and welcome back to Act 2 of Hamlet. I hope you're still enjoying murder, existentialist teens, and sexism, because if so, there is even more heading your way. So we start the scene with Polonius, and he is talking to this poor messenger guy named Rinaldo, and he is just talking this guy's ear off, going on and on and on, until finally Rinaldo makes his escape and Ophelia runs in. Now, Ophelia is a mess. She's crying, her clothes are probably a little torn, and she looks really scared. And her dad is like, "Whoa, what happened here?" And she says, "Dad, Hamlet just came into my room, and he said the most strange, horrible things, and I'm really upset." And Polonius is like, "Whoa, he's literally crazy for you. This is great." And Ophelia says, "What? No, Dad, no. He came in and he was shaking me and he said a bunch of awful nonsensical things and I couldn't understand him and he just stared at me for a really long time before walking backwards out of my room. It was scary. I don't know what's going on." And her dad's like, "Whoa, he's got it so bad for you that he's literally taking it to the next level. You're still playing hard to get, right?" Now, Ophelia probably needs some attention that is not this kind of attention right now, but she still says, "Yeah, I guess. I returned all his letters, and I said I didn't want anything more to do with him, so I did what you said." And her dad is like, "Whoa, this is a great development. We need to go see the king about this." Ophelia clearly needs some medical attention, but instead we're going to go talk to the king about how Hamlet's acting crazy for her, or just acting crazy in general. And that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 2, Scene 2. So now we're back in the heart of Elsinore Castle, and we are with the king and queen, and we get to meet these two guys, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, for the first time. Now, these two are old college buddies of Hamlet's, and the king has brought them over, and he says, you know, guys, Hamlet's been acting kind of weird lately. I don't know what it is, but he loves you guys, so maybe you could try to figure it out. And the two guys are like, sure, we love Hamlet, we'll do that, and we'll keep an eye out for him. The king is planning on using these two guys as spies to keep tabs on Hamlet, but these two guys probably think they're just watching out for their buddy. They don't know what's wrong. So they leave in search of Hamlet, and Polonius comes in saying, Your Majesty, I think I know what's wrong with your son. And the queen says, oh, you mean my hasty marriage and his father's untimely death? And Polonius is like, what? Nah. No. He's in love with my daughter. And the king says, okay, explain. And Polonius says, well, recently I told her to play hard to get, and she did, and now your son's crazy. Bam! Solution to your problems. But the king says, okay, well, I guess that could be it. And so Hamlet comes wandering in at just this time, as the king is telling Polonius that he's got these two spies watching Hamlet, even though it's just two college-age kids who don't really know anything about spying. And so Polonius says, okay, well, give me a chance to talk to him. We'll figure this one out. So the king and queen leave, and now Polonius and Hamlet are alone. Now, Hamlet is kind of not a big fan of Polonius's, as none of us are. We never really find out how Hamlet really feels about Ophelia, but we do know that he did not like Polonius because he knows, like we know, that Polonius is just watching out for himself in this whole exchange, and that he really doesn't care about how Hamlet or Ophelia feel about being match-made. He just cares about himself. So Polonius goes up to him and he's like, how are you today? But Hamlet, being a master of wordplay, calls him a prostitute dealer, a maggot, and an idiot. Very low-key, so Polonius doesn't even know he's being insulted. After a minute, Hamlet sends him away, having completely demolished him in terms of puns, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in. Polonius leaves, still convinced that Hamlet's totally in love with Ophelia, and that's his problem. But he never really picks up that there are bigger things happening here. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern show up, and they're like, hey, Hamlet, we found you! And Hamlet is stoked. These are his two college buddies. More college buddies. We get to hang out with all his friends. And so he's like, whoa, what are you guys doing here? They're like, we just figured we'd drop in. And so Hamlet trades puns with them for a little while, but then he starts waxing philosophic about shadows and death and dreams, and the two guys kind of lose him. But during this whole monologue, Hamlet reminds himself that there's probably a real reason that these guys came from England to Denmark, so he probably shouldn't trust them too much. So while he's monologuing, Rosencrantz finally cuts him off and says, you know what, actually, we wanted to tell you, there's a troupe of actors here. And we wanted to tell you because we know how much you love actors. And Hamlet's like, I love actors. Hamlet is a huge theater geek. He was probably in drama club at college. Who knows how he acquired all this knowledge. He just loves it. That's what we know. So as he says this, Polonius comes back in, boo. But he comes in along with the troupe of actors, and he says, Hamlet, there's a troupe of actors here. And Hamlet's like, I already know that, you idiot. And the troupe of actors are like, it's an honor to be here in the royal court of Denmark. How are you doing? And Hamlet's like, I'm doing great. Can you do a monologue for me? And they're like, sure, name one. And so he picks out one about famous Greek myth idol Hecuba, who was a pretty cool goddess of magic. And the lead actor gives this incredible monologue. He totally nails it. He gets it right off the bat. Hamlet's so impressed. Polonius keeps talking during the entire thing, and Hamlet keeps telling him to shut up. And finally, it's over, and the actors say, so, we want to do a play for you guys. And Hamlet says, can you do this specific play called The Murder of Gonzago with personal edits by moi? And they're like, sure, I guess. And so he's like, sweet, can't wait. And he sends everybody out, and he talks to himself for a minute. He's like, why do we care about people in plays? They're not real. and a whole monologue about how people in plays shouldn't be cared about, which is pretty ironic and maybe a little risky considering there are people in the audience watching Hamlet who've probably been here for an hour already. I wouldn't be the one to tell them they shouldn't care if I were on stage, but suspension of disbelief. So Hamlet tells us his plan with this whole play thing, saying that the murder of Gonzaga was going to be edited so it will perfectly reflect the murder of his father by his uncle. And if his uncle looks uncomfortable about the fact that he's witnessing the only murder he performed, then he is definitely guilty and Hamlet can totally bag him for guilt. And he won't have to feel bad about killing him. It's a great foolproof plan, in theory. And that's the end of the act. Well, I hope you guys really liked it. Action's going to start picking up soon. Please, as always, leave any comments or questions you may have, and I will see you next time for Act 3. Good luck studying. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Act 3 of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Now this one is a pretty significant one, has a lot of the crux of the whole play in there, so pay attention and let's get started. So we're back in the heart of Elsinore Castle, and we're with the king, the queen, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, my girl Ophelia, and her jerk dad Polonius. So they're all together trying to figure out the secret of Hamlet's weird behavior, and the king is saying, "Hey, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, did you figure out the secret of Hamlet's weird behavior?" And they go, "Yeah, but nah, because we tried, but we couldn't really get it out of him." And Polonius is still trying to be useful, but failing. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I couldn't get it out of him either when I was doing my own interrogation techniques on him." Like anyone cares. And so the king is a little frustrated, but he says, "You know what? Good work, nerds. See you later." And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern leave. The king also asks Gertrude, the queen, to leave, which means something shady's about to go down. And he says, "Well, Polonius and I want to be alone, and we're going to position Ophelia here so she and Hamlet can accidentally meet up so we can see if his craziness is actually an indicator of how crazy in love he is with her." This is a bad plan. This is a really bad plan, but no one says anything, and the queen just wishes Ophelia luck and heads out. This will prove to be the most help that anyone offers Ophelia at all throughout this play. So the king and Polonius put Ophelia in the corner of the room. She has her little prayer book, she's praying, and they go off to hide in the curtains. The king calls Ophelia a prostitute to the side, which is the first sign that he might not be the sweet old man he's indicating that he is. I mean, other than the fact that the ghost said he was a murderer. So they go off and hide in the curtains, and Hamlet comes wandering in. Now, he doesn't notice Ophelia's there at first, and he begins his to be or not to be speech, which is probably the most famous part of Hamlet. Now, it's widely agreed that one of Hamlet's character flaws, traits, whatever, is indecision. He can't bring himself to kill Claudius. He can't bring himself to forget the fact that the ghost told him to kill him. He can't figure out how to treat people he wants love but thinks he has been betrayed by. He's just a mess. And even now he can't make a decision. He's trying to decide between life and death, and he's weighing the pros and cons, but he can't figure it out. He cannot make a decision on which is better. Now, after this lengthy and famous monologue, he sees Ophelia, who is pretending like she doesn't know he's there, and he's praying, and he decides that she is a potential evil of the world, like the ones he's been listing. This probably has something to do with the fact that his mother betrayed him, and now he has lost faith in femininity, but that's an underlying theme. So he goes over to her, and he says, "How's it going, Ophelia?" And she says, "Good. Here are my letters and all the things you gave me, and I want to give them back." And he has decided to mess with her. Like, not like jokingly mess with her, but seriously mess with her, like brain damage mess with her. And he says, "What? No, I never gave you those things." And she says, "Yeah, you did. They have your name on them, and I appreciated getting them, but now I'm starting to doubt your sincerity in saying you love me. So," and Hamlet just goes on to rip this girl apart. He calls her names, he says he never loved her, and he tells her to go to a nunnery, which in Shakespearean slang can either mean a literal nunnery full of nuns or a brothel. Eek. Ophelia just kind of stands there and has to take most of it. She asks him to stop a couple of times, but she can't really do anything about it. And so after probably ripping up all her stuff and leaving and calling her more names and telling her that she will never be loved by a man, Hamlet suddenly stops and says, "Where is your father?" Now, he knows, and Ophelia knows, and we all know, that Polonius is behind that curtain over there. But the fact that he has figured this out makes him completely certain that Ophelia has betrayed him and is evil. So she says, "Well, he's at home." And he's like, "You're a liar. Now I know that you're just a witch." And he says, he curses her father, and he curses her to never have children and to die alone. And she's probably on the ground crying because she has been totally demolished by this jerk. And so he curses her one more time, turns on his heel, walks out, and Polonius and Claudius come out of the curtain. They're like, "Whoa, that was weird." And Polonius is like, "Yeah, he's so in love with her. Oh my god." And Claudius says, "You know what? No, I don't think that's what this is." And Polonius is like, "Are you kidding? Did you see the way he called her names and tore up all her things? Love." And Claudius says, No, I think we should try a different tactic." It's usually at this point that they notice that Ophelia is still on the ground crying, and Polonius usually, pulls her up by the arms, and all three of them exit, and that's the end of the scene. Right, Act 3, Scene 2. So we're getting ready for Hamlet's big play, and he's running around giving everyone the edited script of his dad's murder and making sure they know exactly what to do and how to act. And the actors say, "Hamlet, we know how to act." And Hamlet says, "Okay, but I'm serious, don't screw this one up, it's wicked important." And they're like, "Okay," and they all go off to do whatever it is actors do before they're getting ready for a performance in the 14th century. And Polonius and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern all come in, and they say, "Dude, we're stoked for this play. We can't wait. The king and the queen are coming. Everyone in the castle's coming. It's going to be great." And Hamlet says, "Yes, everyone's coming to my play. Can't wait. Super excited." So then Horatio comes in, and Hamlet's excited to see him. He's like, "Dude, you're the only person I'm excited to see. I love you, and I trust you, and you are the only person I can say that about anymore." And Horatio's like, "Yeah, okay." And Hamlet's like, "No, it's true." And he tells Horatio his whole plan for catching the king and how this play is going to work out. And Horatio's like, "This sounds kind of far-fetched, but if it works, I'll help you catch him." And Hamlet's like, "Yes, sweet, broship team." And so now the entire Elsinore court comes in. You got Ophelia, the king, the queen, Polonius, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, everybody. And Hamlet is so excited to see them all there that he insults them all to welcome them, snubs his mom, and goes over to sit with Ophelia. Now, he starts flirting with Ophelia, but Ophelia has not forgotten what he did literally an hour ago when he told her to live a life of misery and die alone. However, there's not much she can do considering Hamlet's royal status and her dad's orders, so she just kind of sits there and takes it again. Someone please, help Ophelia. This is the saddest thing. So, Hamlet's lying in her lap, and the play starts, and before the play there's this brief prelude to the play, and it's a very brief silent show where they act out what's going to happen in the real play. So a loving king and queen enter, they flirt for a little bit, then the queen leaves, the king takes a nap, this other guy sneaks in, takes off the king's crown and puts it on himself, pours poison in the king's ear, and leaves. Now, Hamlet thinks this is great, but everyone else is getting kind of anxious. They're like, "What does this mean?" And Ophelia says to Hamlet, "What's going on?" And he says, "You have to watch the rest of the play to figure it out, babe." So the real play starts. And now it's the same kind of deal. Loving king and queen enter. They talk for a while about how much they love each other. And Hamlet asks his mom what she thinks of the play. And she says the famous line, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks," which you may have said in your own life. I know I have. And the play keeps going. The queen finally leaves. The king lies down for a nap. His brother sneaks in, pours poison in his ear, and at this point, the real king, Claudius, stands up, orders the lights to be turned on, and says the play is over. And he runs out. And everyone's sort of confused on why he did that. But he basically just confessed he's guilty, so Hamlet's really pleased. So everyone leaves, except for Hamlet and Horatio, and Hamlet's like, "Horatio, it worked, he's guilty." And Horatio's like, "Yeah, it did work, considering how much of a long shot that was. I'm really surprised." And so Hamlet's like, yes, I'm so smart. And while he's doing the victory dance, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come back in, and they say, the king's pretty upset with you. And Hamlet's like, yes, sweet, it worked. And so they decided to stop beating around the bush. They say, Hamlet, what is up with you? What's with all the weird stuff? And Hamlet messes with them for about a minute, and then tells them to their faces that he knows they're working for the king, despite their friendship with him, and that he just doesn't want anything to do with them. So they leave, and Polonius comes in, and he says, your mom wants to talk with you. She's not happy. And Hamlet's like, fine, okay, I'll go talk to her later. And Polonius says, no, she wants to talk to you now. And Hamlet's like, oh, okay, fine, I'll go. And he tells Horatio to split, and so Horatio leaves to do stuff, whatever Horatio does when he's not on stage. And Hamlet says, okay, it's tempting to hurt my mom, but I'm just going to scare her. I'm not going to hurt her. Yeesh, Hamlet, you really need to work on your people skills. And that's the end of the scene. Okay, Act 3, Scene 3. So we're with Claudius now, and Hamlet's two unfaithful college buddies, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And they all sort of mutually agree that Hamlet is acting too suspicious for his own good. So Claudius says, I have an idea. Let's exile him to England for being crazy. And the two nerds are like, good idea. And so while they're concocting this plan, Polonius comes in and says, just to let y'all know, Hamlet's on his way to visit his mom, and I'm going to spy on them just to make sure Hamlet doesn't hurt the queen in any way. This sounds like just an excuse to spy on them, but I guess with the way Hamlet's been acting, this could be a real possibility, So Claudius is like, okay, and the two nerds leave, and Polonius leaves to go spy on the prince and the queen, and Claudius is left alone. While he is alone, he confesses to the murder of his brother, and is like, wow, I'm an awful person. Doesn't say why he did it, just says that he did it. And he gets down on his knees and begins to pray. He's like, it's possible that being a weird murderer is not forgiven by God, but I might as well try. So he's praying, and Hamlet comes in to the room that Claudius is silently, obliviously praying in, on his way to see his mom. He sees Claudius on the floor, eyes closed, praying, and it's the perfect opportunity to kill him. Hamlet has a sword, Claudius is totally unaware he's in the room. It's perfect. And Hamlet goes up to do it, and he still can't do it. He says, oh, well, I can't do it right now, because if I killed him right now, he'd just go to heaven. He's being forgiven of his sins by praying right now. So, he's probably going to commit more sins. I'll just wait a little longer. But he's kind of disgusted that he couldn't even bring himself to do it right now, and he's angry that he couldn't get the job done at this perfect opportunity. So he leaves, feeling kind of dejected, and goes to visit his mom. And that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 3, Scene 4. Now we're in the Queen's bedroom. Polonius is currently hiding himself behind the curtain, and Gertrude promises to him that she will be careful when Hamlet shows up because he has proved himself to be a dangerous character. So Polonius is hidden, and Hamlet finally comes in. He's like, alright, Mom, what was so important that I needed to come right away? And she says, Hamlet, you really upset your dad back there. And he's like, A, not my real dad. B, if anyone's upset my dad, it's you, marrying my uncle. So they argue for a little while, and after some bickering, he pulls out a weapon on her, trying to get her to confess her guilt of being an adulterer. And that pretty much does it for her, and she starts screaming for help. And Polonius is like, oh, she needs help, and he tries to get himself out of the curtain, but he sort of bungles it. And Hamlet turns around, thinking there's an intruder in the room, and stabs Polonius through the curtain. Polonius falls over, and he dies. Body count 1. So Hamlet goes to check on the body, and Gertrude is just screaming her head off because she just saw her son murder someone in cold blood. Hamlet's hoping it's the king, but obviously it's Polonius, so he curses Polonius and turns back to his mom. And his mom is like, this is awful, you just killed somebody. And Hamlet's like, I don't think it's as bad as what you did, marrying someone. False. But he keeps yelling at her, demanding she confesses her guilt and that she's married an evil man and she's dishonored his father by marrying him. And he keeps yelling and yelling while she's crying and getting really upset, and then the ghost reappears. So Hamlet sees the ghost come in, and he screams, and he is afraid he's doing something wrong. So he says, like, what am I doing wrong? Why are you here? And the ghost says, I'm checking up on your progress. Now, comfort your mother. This is the woman I love. Like, chill out. So Hamlet turns back to his mom and starts talking to her again, being a lot nicer than before. And Gertrude is freaked out. Like, this is a very sudden change in attitude, and she's even more upset because she thinks her son is definitely off the deep end. And so Hamlet is begging to her to look at the ghost and see her dead husband again and realize what she's done wrong, but she can't see him like the others can. So Hamlet keeps begging her to look at him, but she just can't see anything. So the ghost just keeps watching them without saying anything. And Hamlet is calmer now, and he asks his mother to pray for forgiveness and have her soul be cleansed of her sin in marrying Claudius so she can go to heaven when she dies and be with Hamlet's father again. But eventually he just kind of gives up, and he asks God for forgiveness for what he's done in murdering Polonius, and says that he'll go to hell anyway because he's killed somebody, and that's wrong. As I said back in Act 1, that was 14th century Christianity for you. So he says to his mom to think about what he said after he's shipped off to England, which shows he's known about Claudius's and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's plans this whole time. So he says goodnight to his mother, takes Polonius by the feet, and drags him out, and that's the end of the act. So that was Act 3, kind of a doozy, but still, here we are, and we'll be starting on Act 4 soon, so please, as always, leave any comments or questions below, and good luck studying. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Act 4 of Hamlet. Now that the body count has started to go on the rise, we might as well just start. So, Act 4 starts off where Act 3 left off. And we're back in the Queen's bedroom, and the Queen is there, the King is there, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are there. Now, the Queen is terrified, having just witnessed a murder. Hamlet's gone, and nobody knows what he did with the body. There's a blood trail on the floor from Polonius, probably from where Hamlet dragged him out, and everyone's really confused. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern go to look for Hamlet to see if they can try to find him and the body. And the King and the Queen stay in, and the King says, Gertrude, what happened? And the Queen says, Hamlet is as crazy as a one-eyed bat, and he just killed Polonius, and I'm really confused. And the King is like, oh, that's too bad. I'm really upset. But secretly, he's probably like, sweet, because this is a totally good excuse to exile Hamlet somewhere and possibly even execute him, which would solve a lot of Claudius's problems. So he says, Gertrude, this is a tragedy. We need to go out and tell everyone that this awful thing has happened and see if those two nerds can find Hamlet so we can pass a sentence on him. And he comforts her for a minute because she is upset and they are married, so you would hope that's what happens in a married relationship, even amongst murderers. And that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 4, Scene 2. So we're back with Hamlet. He just hid the body, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern finally catch up with him. And obviously they're a little shaken because this is their college bro Hamlet. They knew he was a little off, but they didn't know he was literally going to kill someone. So they say, Hamlet, dude, where did you hide the body? And Hamlet doesn't tell them where the body is. Instead, he accuses them of listening to the king instead of to him, their buddy, which at this point, who can really blame them, messes with them for a little bit, and then says, listen, I'm not going to tell you where the body is, so you can just take me to the king and have him do to me whatever he's going to do to me. So they drag him out, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 4, Scene 3. So we're back with the king, who's with some servants, and they're all waiting for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to get back. And the king says, don't worry guys, I've got my best guys on this, I'm sure they'll find the body and Hamlet. And Rosencrantz comes in and he says, well, bad news, we couldn't find the body, but we did find Hamlet. And the king goes, oh, okay, fine, bring him in. And Guildenstern drags in Hamlet, and the king says, for Pete's sake, Hamlet, where's the body? And Hamlet's answer amounts to pretty much dead, lol. And after sufficient punning, he finally tells the king, oh, fine, the body's under the stairs in the front lobby. And you realize that he hid the body there just so he can make all of these sweet puns. Hamlet's a loser. So the king says to Hamlet, you realize we have to exile you now, right? And Hamlet says, sure, I'm stoked to go to England. See you later, fake dad. And pretty much just ollies out of there. And so Rosencrantz and Guildenstern stay behind, and the king writes out a letter and gives it to them and says, when you get to England, please give this letter to the King of England so he knows what's up and why Hamlet's been exiled and stuff. And those guys say, sure, we'll escort him there. And they take the letter, and they go. And Claudius does his evil laugh at hand rubbing his skin, like, oh, if only they knew that the letter doesn't actually tell the king what's up, but instead says, kill whoever is bearing this letter. And Hamlet's definitely going to die. This plan is foolproof. I've got him this time. This plan is about as foolproof as the play plan that Hamlet concocted a few acts ago, but with less good results. Anyway, he sends him off with that letter, cackles, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 4, Scene 4. We have a guest in Denmark, and it's Prince Fortinbras, Prince of Norway. And remember how 3 acts ago we were talking about rocky Denmark-Norway relationships? Well, slowly but surely, probably 2 hours later, that conversation is starting to actually matter. And so Fortinbras is talking to the captain of soon-to-be Hamlet ship, and is saying, please remind the king that I'm going to be back later to talk to him about land deals, alright? And the captain says, alright. And this probably won't matter for another 45 minutes, but the fact that he is coming to discuss land deals is important. Remember. So he leaves, and Hamlet and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come on. They're getting on the ship. And Hamlet turns to the captain, and he says, Who's that guy? He looked important. The captain says, that's Fortinbras, Prince of Norway. And so Hamlet and the captain talk meaningless politics for about 20 seconds, and then either Rosencrantz or Guildenstern, typically doesn't matter, says, can we get a move on? Jeez. And Hamlet says, sure, just give me a minute to myself. And surprisingly they do, even though Hamlet is now a convicted murderer and criminal. They just leave him alone. So Hamlet's by himself so he can monologue, and he says, well, this whole revenge deal has been inconveniently held up by this exiling thing. But how come I couldn't do it while I was in Denmark? Is it because I'm weak-willed? Is it because I'm afraid of going to hell? Is it because I'm indecisive? All of the above? Who knows? After a monologue discussing his own personal weaknesses, he says, well, it could be any of those things, but I guess I still have to do it. So I'm going to get back to Denmark somehow, even though I am currently on a boat to England. He gets on the boat, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 4, Scene 5. A really long one. So we're back with the Queen and my main man Horatio, and Horatio's talking to the Queen. He's like, she just really wants to see you, and the Queen says, I don't want to talk to her. Who were they talking about? It's a mystery, considering there's only one other female character in this play. And Horatio says, please, she only wants to talk to you. She's been talking about her dad for days, and she's singing weird songs and making weird gestures, and this is all she wants. And the Queen is fine, like, fine, I'll talk to her. And so Horatio goes out to get whoever we're talking about. And while he's gone, the Queen says, I really don't want to talk to her. So Horatio comes back in a moment later with Ophelia in tow. Now, Ophelia is a mess. Her clothes are ripped, her eyes aren't focusing on anything, she's probably covered in flowers and weeds a la every production of Hamlet ever produced. And she might have a cool flower crown, but that's probably it. And the Queen's like, hey, Ophelia, what's up? And the Queen says, where's the beautiful Queen of Denmark? And the Queen's like, I'm right here. But Ophelia doesn't notice her. She is off the deep end. She's lost it. So she starts singing her song about love, and then a song about death, and all of her songs are about love and death. And the Queen keeps trying to get her attention, and Horatio's just kind of watching this happen. And eventually even the King comes in to see what's up, but Ophelia doesn't notice or recognize either of them. She just keeps singing her songs. The King's like, wow, she's crazy, but also really pretty. Ophelia needs some real help, and all you can say is she's pretty. Okay. Okay. And so Ophelia keeps singing her songs. She starts screaming at the queen and king, and what she's saying sounds like nonsense, but it's actually foreshadowing for the end of the play. And so eventually she wanders back out, and the king's like, wow, Ophelia was so pretty and now she's so crazy. What happened? I don't know, maybe repeated abuse from you and her father, and mental abuse from Hamlet, and probably the queen and everyone who wasn't Horatio. Maybe. The death of her father, maybe. And so the king says, all right, Horatio, keep an eye on her. And Horatio should say, literally, I've been the only person who's been keeping an eye on her. Get someone else to do it. But instead, because he has a heart of gold, says, okay, and leaves. And so a second later, a servant bursts in, and there's loud noises in the background. And he says, whoa, sorry, but I just have to tell you, Laertes is at the door. He's got a huge mob. They overthrew the guards, and they want Laertes to be king. Laertes busts in a second later with this mob on his heels, yelling, Laertes for king! Laertes for king! Now, to me, this is the most hilarious part of the play, because it raises so many questions. How did Laertes get this mob? Does he want to be king? How did he get back from France so fast? Was this his master plan all along? What was going on in France? Laertes truly is a mystery wrapped in an enigma of stupid. So he comes into the throne room with the mob, and he says, alright guys, thanks, I'll take it from here. And they all leave. No more of this Laertes for king junk. That's it. You never hear about this again. Which makes me think he probably didn't want to be king, he just wanted a mob, so he said he wanted to be king, because anyone will go for a mob if you think there's going to be a new king, I guess. That's how things work. And so he turns on the king and says, dude, and he's holding a rapier. He's threatening the king. The queen is like, ah! He's like, where is my dad? And the king's like, oh, Laertes, we should have emailed you. And Laertes like, shut up! Where is my dad? And the king says, Laertes, I hate to tell you this, but your dad's dead. And Laertes is like, oh my god! And the king's like, but I wasn't the one who killed him. And Laertes is like, tell me who killed him right now. I'll kill whoever killed him. Laertes, your dad was super old. He could have just kicked the bucket. Who knows? But he's like, tell me who killed him. And the king sees this as a golden opportunity in case this murder by letter scheme for Hamlet doesn't work out. He says, Laertes, would you kill anyone if I told you who killed your father? And Laertes is like, yeah, I'd kill anyone. I loved my dad. I'm super mad about this. And Claudia says, you know what, Laertes? You're a good kid. I like you. The person who killed your dad was... At this moment, Ophelia wanders back in, and her arms are full of flowers and weed and junk. And you're wondering, Horatio, you said you were going to watch Ophelia. Why is she coming back in at this exact moment? I like to think that he set her loose with all these jerks, and that she and he probably high-fived as she was heading back in, because Ophelia and Horatio are the best characters. But that's probably not what happened, because she was crazy. But just go with me on this one. She wanders back in. Laertes sees his sister. She's like, oh my god, Ophelia, what happened? Did you not listen to my totally sexist advice about dating Hamlet? But she doesn't recognize him. She doesn't say anything to him. She gives him some flowers. She gives the queen some flowers. She gives the king some flowers. She keeps singing her song. And the flowers she gives the king and the queen actually symbolize falsehood, adultery, bad intentions. But she's making it look real cute, like she's just giving him flowers. So Ophelia might have actually known what was up all along. And it just took the guise of being crazy to accuse them of it, which is super cool. So she does not speak to Laertes once. She gives everyone flowers and sings her little song, and she wanders back out. So this is awful for Laertes. He is having a tough day. His dad's dead, Ophelia's crazy, and he's like, oh my god, my dad's dead and my sister's crazy. And Claudia says, well, that is pretty awful, but I got a plan. You gotta listen to me on this one. So he sends the queen away, and here in Laertes are left alone, and that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 4, Scene 6. So we're back with our pal Horatio, and he gets a letter from one of the servants, and he's like, hey, this letter must be from Hamlet. So he opens it and reads it aloud for us, the audience, to know what's going on. Basically it says, hey Horatio, it's me, Hamlet. Guess what? On the way to England, our ship got attacked by pirates, and I jumped aboard and made friends with them, and now I'm basically the captain since they mutinied and they're taking me back to Denmark. be ready to pick me up in a couple of days from the shipyard, but don't tell anybody because it's illegal for me to be here. This scene is so ridiculous to me. Like, it is so ridiculous. This is the coolest part of the play. Like, definitely the coolest part of the play that could be conceived. I mean, mutiny, pirates, Hamlet becoming a pirate captain. That's so cool. Who doesn't want to see that? But we never get to see it. No audience has ever seen this super cool sequence. Horatio just tells us about it by reading the letter. I mean, who really has time for a totally awesome pirate fight battle sequence when you could have 7 long soliloquies about the human condition? But whatever, end scene. Alright, Act 4, Scene 7. We're back with Claudius and Laertes again. Oh. And so Claudius has now told Laertes that Hamlet was responsible for his father's death, along with his sister's insanity. So Laertes obviously has to kill him now. So Laertes is like, alright, I'm ready to kill this guy. I am so ready. And Claudius is like, alright, but listen. I've been trying to kill this kid for days now without stepping on any toes. It's hard. I mean, if he died and everyone knew it was my fault, my wife would be upset with me, and the nation would probably execute me for treason or whatever. So we need to really plan this out. And Laertes is like, alright, just tell me what to do. I am your man. I am ready. I am so ready. And so as they're talking about this, a messenger comes in and he says, hey, sorry to interrupt, but Prince Hamlet sent you and the Queen some letters. He just wanted you to know he's coming back to Denmark. Hamlet's an idiot. I don't know why he did this and expected it to be a secret, but this is just something he did for kicks, I guess. Moving on. So, Claudius is a little disappointed his whole murder by letter thing didn't work, but Laertes is like, sweet, now I really get to kill him. And Claudius is like, okay, alright, I can work with this. Now let's come up with a plan. So, here's the plan, Laertes. I've heard you're pretty good at sword fighting, and Laertes says, dude, I'm the best at sword fighting. And Claudius says, good, alright. So when we see Hamlet, and I'm sure we will see him at one point now that he has sent us this letter, I want you to challenge him to a sword fight. And we will totally poison your sword, so if he gets cut by it, it will poison him. And Laertes says, awesome, that sounds so cool, do it. And Claudius says, alright, now, but if he should happen to hit you first, we'll get this, like, this victorious cup of wine that he can drink from if he gets the first hit, and we'll poison that too. And Laertes says, cool, alright, poison the glass, love it. And Claudius is like, yeah, basically we're just going to poison everything in the throne room. Nothing could possibly go wrong. This kid is definitely going to die. Laertes says, yeah, love it, love it. Amidst all this, excitement over murder, the queen comes running in, and she's really upset. And so the two guys are like, oh, hey, what's up? And she's like, oh my god, Ophelia's dead! This is so sad. I mean, this is just like the sweet pirate fight from last act. We didn't even get to see it happen. Someone just tells us it happened. And Ophelia's dead. I'm sorry. That's so sad. She was possibly the best character along with Horatio, and I don't know how we're going to carry on. Try your best. So Laertes is like, oh my god, what happened? And the queen says, well, no one was watching her, and she was down by the river, and she was picking flowers, and then she fell into the river, and she didn't realize she was drowning, so she was just singing to herself until her clothes dragged her down, and she drowned. This is a pretty descriptive story. Maybe that's not even what happened, but it's what Gertrude says happened, so we just have to believe it. Now, thinking about it, this might be maybe a little bit Horatio's fault, because if you remember, Horatio was the person who was watching her, but he left for half an hour to go pick Hamlet up from the docks. So Ophelia was on her own, she drowned. Sorry everybody, this is just how things are gonna go. So Laertes is obviously crying, he's really upset, he's like, oh man, now I really have to kill Hamlet because my sister's dead. And so Gertrude says, yeah, it's awful, and she exits. And Claudius claps him on the shoulder. He's like, you're a good man. I know you'll kill him just right. And Laertes is like, yeah, I'll definitely kill him. It'll be great. So, that's the end of Act 4. I know it was pretty long, but we still got there in the end. Now that my best girl Ophelia is dead, I don't really know how much passion I can really put into this, but we all just have to keep trucking on. Act 5 is next. It'll finish things up, and as always, leave comments and questions below. I look forward to them, and good luck studying. Hi everyone, and welcome back one last time to Act 5 of Shakespeare's Hamlet. I think most of you are probably ready to be done with this super long play, so let's just get started. So we are just outside the castle in Denmark right now, and we are joined by these two clowns who are digging a grave. And by clowns, I mean servants or gravediggers, and that's what they're currently doing. And they're singing while they're digging this grave, and they're talking about whether Ophelia is going to go to hell or not, since she committed suicide, and what religion is, and how this funeral is going to go, and all, small talk, gravedigger stuff. And that's when our heroes, Hamlet and Horatio, sneak back in. So remember, it's illegal for Hamlet to be here, so Horatio's helping him sneak around. Also, Horatio is the one watching Ophelia, and he took a half-hour break, and now Ophelia is dead. He doesn't know this yet, however, so we're going to pick up on it later on. So Hamlet's walking by, and he hears these two gravediggers sing a song as they're working, and he says, wow, they're about to bury a dead person. They're saying, that's kind of insensitive. And Horatio's like, yeah, I guess, but it's not that weird. And so Hamlet's walking by, and he sees the skull on the ground. He's like, whoa, Horatio, I am really connecting to the skull right now. It used to be a person, and now it's a skull. And Horatio's like, yeah, okay. And so, but Hamlet is so into these skulls, he keeps picking them up and saying who they may or may not have been, and what's up with life and death. And Horatio's response to everything is kind of, yeah, I guess. And so eventually, Hamlet strikes up a conversation with one of these gravediggers and says, hey, who's this grave for anyway? And the gravedigger and he share puns for a minute until the gravedigger says, well, a girl who just died, I guess. And Horatio puts two and two together and is like, oh no. But Hamlet doesn't know a thing, so we're just going to let that one go for a minute. And so Hamlet finds another skull. He's like, whoa. This is the skull of a guy I knew named Yorick. I don't know how Hamlet knows this. It is very plausible that this is not Yorick's skull. I would not be able to recognize anyone's skull on sight. Nor would you or anyone, I think, just by looking at it. But he's like, I loved this person like a father, and now he's dead. Is this what life is like for everyone? Is this what death is like for everyone? And Horatio's getting kind of nervous. He's like, yeah, I guess so. And so then Hamlet goes on a bit of a spiel about Alexander the Great. But then the Elsinore court comes out, so they have to go hide. So everyone's coming out for Ophelia's funeral. You got the priest, you got Laertes, you got Queen Gertrude and King Claudius, the whole gang. So Horatio is watching the bushes, and he's probably just quietly praying that Hamlet is not going to put this one together. Because we all know that Hamlet has a penchant for freakouts, and finding out Ophelia is dead is going to be one heck of a freakout. So Laertes is talking to the priest. He's like, make sure you give this lady the proper rites, because she's important, alright? And Hamlet's like, wow, I wonder who's dead. And so Laertes goes, probably really loudly, oh my god, it's awful, my beautiful sister is dead. And Hamlet's like, oh my god, Ophelia's dead. And thus commences his freak out. And so meanwhile, the queen is scattering flowers over Ophelia in her grave and says, I wish you would marry Hamlet, but look where we are now. And Laertes jumps into Ophelia's grave to hug her one more time. It's way weird and super inappropriate, but don't worry, because even weirder and more inappropriate things were yet to come. Because I guess this is the last straw for Hamlet, because he jumps out of the bush and this is like, how dare you hug your own sister when I clearly loved her more? It's me, Prince Hamlet! And everyone's like, whoa, Hamlet, you're not supposed to be here. And so he ignores that, and he jumps into the grave with Laertes, and they start fighting over Ophelia's body. It's super gross. It's super gross and awful, and it's horrible to watch, and it's cringeworthy, and they didn't even really treat her very nice when she was alive. But anyway, it happens, and so the queen and the king are yelling at them to stop, and Horatio's probably just hanging back because he doesn't want to be involved in this, until finally he gets fed up, and he's like, Hamlet, knock it off! And Hamlet knocks it off, and he and Laertes climb out of the grave. And Hamlet says, you know what, I'll fight you, because I love Ophelia 40,000 times more than you ever did. Which is possible, because 40,000 times 0 is still 0. And so Laertes and the king are like, sweet, because this is going exactly according to plan. And so Hamlet ends up getting dragged away, still yelling, I'll fight you! And Horatio kind of trails after him being like, dude, that was one hot mess back there, what were you thinking? And Laertes is like, cool, I get to fight him now. And the king's like, sweet, a fight, can't wait. And everyone exits. I don't know what they did with Ophelia's body, if they ended up burying her or not, or if they just kind of left her there out of the grave with her body all thrown around. But that's the end of the scene. Alright, Act 5, Scene 2, last one. So we're with Hamlet and Horatio. Hamlet's getting dressed for this rapier fencing. And he's like, wow, Horatio, I am so ready to fight this guy. I'm awesome at sword fighting, as evidenced by that awesome pirate fight no one saw. And Horatio's like, yeah, okay. And as an aside, Hamlet tells Horatio that that letter that Claudius sent him to England with, you know, the murder letter, he slipped onto Rosencrantz and Guildenstern as they were heading out. So things aren't looking good for them. But he doesn't know that yet, so that's just to let us know. So he talks for a little bit about how much he hates King Claudius, but then he calms down and he says, you know what, Horatio? I feel kind of bad. I was pretty mean to Laertes yesterday, and his sister just died. He didn't deserve that. And Horatio says, yeah, but you still have to fight him. I mean, you said you would. And Hamlet's like, yeah, I know. And Horatio says, he's a pretty good sword fighter, too. I think you're going to lose. And as he says this, Osric, a servant, comes in and says, so are you guys going to fight or what? Because the king and queen are really waiting for this. And Hamlet's like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to go. We're going to win. Horatio just kind of follows him out like he's not going to win. So Hamlet and Laertes meet up in the throne room, and they have to shake hands to show that there are no hard feelings. And Hamlet says, Laertes, look, I'm sorry for what happened yesterday. It was pretty uncool. My bad. Let's just be friends. And Laertes is like, yeah, okay. So Hamlet takes up a sword, and Laertes takes up a sword, and then he's like, wait, this is the poison sword. Give me another one. And he takes the poison sword. And Claudius, as part of the plan, says, Hamlet, by the way, if you should hit Laertes first, second, third, or any point in the match, feel free to take some of this beautiful wine we prepared for you that no one else is going to drink and is definitely not poisoned. And Hamlet's like, thanks, got it. So they put on their fencing garb, and they begin to fence, and Hamlet gets the first hit. Everyone's amazed. And so the king is like, cool, drink from the wine glass. And he's like, I'm not even thirsty. It's been like 20 seconds. And so they start fencing again, and he hits Laertes again. And the king's like, cool, now drink the wine glass. And the queen takes it from him and says, Hamlet, you're doing so well. Please take a drink. And he's like, no thanks, Val, I'm good. And so she's like, okay. And she starts to take a drink from that. And the king's like, no, Gertrude, don't drink that. But she does anyway. We don't know why. Maybe there was a reason, maybe there wasn't. She was just insanely thirsty, maybe she was suicidal. Who knows? Body count soon to be 3. So Laertes and the king kind of share that oh man look real quick. And they've already accidentally killed one person, so Laertes cheats and cuts Hamlet across the side or the arm or wherever while the fencing guard wasn't on. So he cheated, and now Hamlet's definitely going to die. He's got that ticking time bomb of poison across wherever. And so Hamlet turns around. He's pretty mad. This guy just cheated on him, and they start like seriously fighting for a minute, you know, not professionally. At some point they switch swords somehow, and Hamlet cuts Laertes right back. So Laertes is pretty in trouble now. Body count seemed to be 5. So they stop fighting, and Laertes is like, oh man, Hamlet, I think I might have taken this one too far. And Hamlet sees his mom has like dropped onto the ground, and he's like, oh man, Mom, what's wrong? And the king is like, I don't know, I think she's just getting dizzy at the sight of blood. Women, am I right? And the queen is like, no, the drink was poisoned, and she dies, and the body count is 3. So Hamlet's like, there's a traitor in here, lock all the doors. So the servants lock the doors. And Laertes is on the ground. He was probably poisoned closer to the heart or wherever. And he's like, Hamlet, listen, it was me and the king. We were in on it together. We poisoned the glass and the sword, and you're gonna die, and I'm dying right now. And so Hamlet, here at the very end of the play, turns on the king, says, you're awful and a murderer and stuff. stabs him with the poisoned sword, makes him drink from the poisoned glass for good measure, and the king dies, at last. Body count 4. I would give Hamlet a solid D for that performance. That was an incredibly late arrival in terms of what he was set out to do at the very beginning of this play. So Laertes is on the ground, he's like, oh man, I'm dying. Okay, Hamlet, please forgive me for killing you so I won't go to hell. I forgive you for killing me and my dad. And he dies. And Hamlet's like, I forgive you. And then he falls over. And he's like, oh man, Horatio, I'm dying. And Horatio's like, no, Hamlet, you can't go. I love you. And Hamlet's like, no, man, Horatio, you have to live and tell my story, but I'm dying right now. And Horatio's like, all of my friends are dying / dead. There's some poison left in this cup, let me just... And Hamlet snacks that glass out of his hand and says, no, if you ever love me, you have to live and tell my story. He's basically blackmailing this poor dude, but it's important that Horatio lives. So Horatio's holding him in his arms, and Hamlet says, oh, by the way, when Prince Fortinbras from Norway gets here, tell him he's king now, and I will say no more on the subject. And he dies. Body count 6. Total right now. So Prince Fortinbras comes in. Remember how I said he was coming in to talk about land deals? Well, this was supposed to be the land deal meeting, but he got here a little late. So he sees all the dead bodies on the ground, and he's like, oh my god, what happened? And Horatio says, I guess you're the king now. And they talk meaningless politics for a moment. This messenger comes in to tell us that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead because of the murder letter that Hamlet was talking about, bringing the body count to around 8. And thus ends the tragedy of Hamlet. Now, I hope you guys liked it. I hope you loved it. I hope you tell me how you felt about it, if you liked it, loved it, or maybe didn't love it. Hope you really enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or questions you may have, and I will see you next time for the next performance.